Hey, what's up, everybody? Ryan Wood here, along with Pete Doherty, and we're going to kind of do a little bit of a different format, Pete, than usual. To let you guys in on this, Pete and I talk about the games that happen immediately after the games, after we file, which we just filed our stories all the time, and we thought we'd kind of let you in on this conversation and take some questions from you, but really also just discussing amongst ourselves. I think the big thing that people are going to be talking about, Pete, is the Clay Matthews penalty. And to me, the biggest takeaway is that it's a problem.
Well, that's the thing that you heard about people the most from.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and on my Twitter timelines, they...
Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining, by the way.
They love to let me know what they think. To me, the biggest takeaway is it's a problem for the league, because that hitting the quarterback is as confusing as catching a pass has ever been, and that itself was a problem for the league for a long time. I don't know what's a legal hit anymore.
The one thing is, I'm guessing what will happen is the Packers will submit this play, and the league will get back to them, and the league will say, he didn't pick him up and put him to the ground, it was a bad call.
Doesn't help today.
No, it doesn't. And look, it probably was the wrong call. It sure looked like it. We both watched. You watched the replay a bunch of times. I saw it a couple of times. I mean, it probably wasn't a penalty, but it wasn't just a ridiculous, egregious call. And I know Packers fans are, apoplectic about this, but it did not cost them the game. The Vikings had to go down and score a touchdown and get a 2-point conversion. A lot of chances in there for the Packers to get a stop.
They had a field goal kick at the end to win.
And plus they had their other chances to win. Plus this rule generally works in their favor because they've got one of the two best quarterbacks in the league, and anything that protects quarterbacks
That's a good point.
is going to lengthen his career and keep him healthier. So it hurt him in one game, but in the long run it's very likely going to help this team. And it wasn't that, I don't think it was just some horrendous call. I mean, watching the replay, yeah, he didn't pick him up, but I could see what the ref saw. His arm kind of slid under the leg, and you saw the play a bunch of times.
Well, so what I think ticked Packers fans off on Twitter was what I saw was Clay Matthews land on Kirk Cousins, and he did. And if you don't think he did, go back to Nick Perry's sack that ended the Bears game. Watch that. It's a completely different play. Clay Matthews landed on Kirk Cousins. To me, the way it's been explained is that if a rusher lands on a quarterback now, that's a penalty. The problem is that Tony Corrente didn't call that. It wasn't the body weight penalty. He called Clay Matthews lifting Kirk Cousins, which when you go back and you look at the front side of the play,
right, we had
the back side of the play.
A reporter went down, did a pool report, talked to Corrente.
Right.
If you didn't see this, you probably have, but in case you didn't, talk to Corrente. And Corrente said the call was for picking him up and driving him into the turf.
Kirk Cousins got hit by Clay Matthews when he was in the air. He leaped to heave the ball deep downfield. So he was already suspended in the air when the contact was made. From the backside, you see Clay Matthews wrapping his left arm around Kirk Cousins' right leg, which he grabs upward. So if anything, I think Tony Corrente saw that movement and called it a lift, but it was very clear that he drove through the quarterback. It was a bad call. It erased a win. It was a bad call,
and it's getting and
a bad explanation.
And people are getting, a lot of people are getting riled up here. I see all your, but no, it didn't cost them the game because they still had chances to get stops. And bad calls happen all the time. They had they could have gotten a stop on the 2-point play. They could have gotten a stop on any of the plays before. They could have scored a touchdown in either of those two drives in the final.
Could have made a 52-yard field goal.
Had a 52-yard field goal. They were in scoring position, and Rodgers fumbled and then got sacked, or they were on the brink of kicking a field goal. So no, if you're looking at the full spectrum of the game, you can't say, boy, that play cost them the game.
Now here's my question to you: it's a tie, Pete. Does it feel a little bit like a loss for the Packers considering it's here?
Very much so. You can tell by their reaction after the game.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Vikings were saying the same thing. We should have won this game.
Daniel Carlson misses 3 field goals.
I was looking at the quote sheet, and there were guys saying that. But the Packers, this is a game they should have won. It would have been great for them for the division lead, for the tiebreakers at the end of the year, head-to-head and division stuff. So yeah, it was big.
Patton should have played prevent defense at the end. What do you make of that? I think the defense was gassed. Kenny Clark said it was as gassed as physically tiring of a game as he's ever played. It was really warm here at Lambeau Field. Keep in mind, Kenny Clark played at UCLA, which the LA stands for Los Angeles. He's played in some hot games. This is as tired as he's ever been. They were gassed at the end.
And another thing on getting back to the quarterback penalties, You could call the penalty on Kendricks was just as shaky, and that gave the Packers 3 points at the end of the first half. I mean, it's just, the obsessing on this one call, I just think is a big mistake, and it's letting the Packers off the hook because they had more than their share of chances to win the game anyway. And you can point to other calls that could have cost either team the game too.
I think the point that you make, Pete, is a good one, that it's probably better for Aaron Rodgers that a call like that is made, because it's going to help him in the short term and the long term.
And somebody pointed out, and because I'm sure they're right about Mike Daniels, and that's all the way they're interpreting his rules. That's why that one play where Cousins escaped the pocket, where Daniels thought he threw it and he just didn't even touch him. The defensive players know how it's being called, so they're going out of their way to not hit quarterbacks. And that means Rodgers is going to take less hits. I mean, if this was even 3 or 4 years ago, that's not a penalty on me. If it's a year ago, that's probably not a penalty on me.
I wrote about this. It very much changes the way the game is played. That Daniels play is probably the best example, but talking to the guys in the locker room, they're genuinely confused on what can they do to hit the quarterback. And they're not the only ones. I'm confused, too. I thought it was one and it was the other. It's as confusing as the catch rule ever was, and the catch rule was a mess for eternity. It felt like this is also a mess to me.
Somebody was asking why they didn't try to chew clock at 23-21. I don't know what you think. I personally think they did the right thing. When this game is such a scoring game now, you gotta get more points on the board. They really needed a touchdown. It's late in that game. They had 3 or 4 shots at it. You got it. It's easier to score than to get stopped, so you have to try to get in the end zone, and that means throwing the ball.
They were clearly looking for 6 there at the end.
And I thought it was I don't know if you think that was the right way to go.
Eric Kendricks made a play. That was a heck of a play he made in the end zone on Devontae Adams. They had 6, and Eric Kendricks made a play. He's a really good linebacker. The other team makes plays too. I absolutely agree. I thought that going for 6 there, if you get 6, the game's pretty much over. If you get a field goal, even if you milk a little bit more time left, they still have an opportunity to go down and score a touchdown. The time's not as important as the points in that situation.
A lot of complaining about the officiating. I just think there's a little bit of a victim's mentality in looking at things that way. There was just too many chances for the Packers to win this game regardless.
It did erase a win, because if the call isn't made and it was the wrong call, then they win the game. So I get that. But you can't just say that was the sole reason that they lost, or that they didn't lose, they tied, excuse me. I'm still getting used to this too.
Well, Rodgers basically said it. He didn't basically say. He said it felt more.
Nick Perry said the same too.
It felt a lot more like an L than a W.
Yeah. So yes, it erased the win. But there were a ton of other plays. And frankly, there's a ton of plays on the Vikings side too. Daniel Carlson makes a 35-yard field goal at the end, and it is an actual loss. They're 1-1 instead of 1-0-1. Both of those teams left a ton of plays on the field today. Usually when you do that, it is a tie.
Yeah. Well, everybody's getting the chance to vent. We can all have our own opinions on this. Anything else about this game jump out at you besides the
That's what
Matthews play?
You know what was really interesting was to hear Mason Crosby discuss what happened on that final kick, because he made not just all 5, but he made the 52-yarder before, and then got Mike Zimmer got the timeout in. He said, I was really interested. He said that all day at that north end zone, the ball was on kicks, on field goals, was moving kind of left to right. And he pointed to Daniel Carlson missing all 3 of his kicks to the right. He said that the crosswind was just really deceptive today. So, and he knew that. He's a veteran kicker. He's kicked in Lambeau Field before. He was 5 for 5, made the 52-yarder. On that second 52-yard attempt, he tried to correct and take the line with the crosswind, play it left to right, and it stayed left. And it didn't go right. And he said that's what happened. I mean, life is tough as a kicker. Like that's got to be really confusing.
This is a tough place to kick, and when the flags were Lambeau's right here, the field is right here, and it runs north south. And when the flags are pointing one way, what kickers have said over the years and punters is it's either when you get close to the field blowing the other way or blowing across. I think it just tends to swirl in there, especially since they've in the last 15 years built all this stuff up around on top of the ball. What a couple people have asked about Bryce. I want to watch that play again, because it looked like he should have had a good shot at that ball.
Who was the corner on the sideline there?
I think it was 23. I think it was Alexander.
Was it Alexander?
Yeah.
I thought, looking at the replay a couple times, it almost looked like he was trying to miss Alexander, because if you look at it, if he runs in a straight line there through the ball, he's going to crush his own teammate. Like it's going to be a messy, brutal collision. he kind of tried to miss Alexander, the corner, on the sideline, and by doing that, missed the ball. It was almost pure magic that the ball got through there. I couldn't believe the ball got through there.
It was a great throw. I thought. I just came away from that feeling Bryce should have been able to make a play.
But I think it's because he adjusted to miss his teammate that he actually missed the ball by doing that. That's what it looked
Trey,
like.
that's not nice. Or Troy, sorry. I'm not smart.
Actually, he's very smart.
It's Doughberty, by the way. So the tight ends got involved. Somebody pointed out that's Jimmy Graham was a lot bigger factor today. 6 catches, 95 yards.
He was.
Had a touchdown taken off the board on a holding penalty. He's much more a factor, more the guy that we expected to see actually making plays instead of just being a decoy like he was last week.
Did you think that was a DPI on that one?
I didn't see the replay. A lot of people here are saying that it was a really shaky call, or even less, worse than shaky.
They did. It was a non-call. I thought he still should have made the catch anyway. I didn't think there was a ton of contact. There was by letter of the rule, and if we learned anything today, they're going by letter of the rule.
Well,
there was contact early.
When it comes to protecting quarterbacks, they do that.
Yeah.
They let a lot of hand fighting go with the DBs and receivers. Look at Geronimo Allison's catch. Last week, he pushed off on the guy, on Fuller on that touchdown pass that won the game.
Would you agree that the Clay Matthews roughing was a really close call, if nothing else?
It was it was close. He definitely, you watch the replay, you say that's just not a penalty. But it was close enough where it wasn't just this, I didn't think it was just this ridiculous, egregious call.
The reason why I ask is one player I talked with in the locker room. His frustration wasn't with the rule, wasn't even with the call itself. It was when the call was made, and the fact that such a subjective call was made on a game on a play where the game was clearly on the line, instead of letting the players play. What do you make of that?
That's getting into a deep area here. I don't know. You can't. I don't know that you should change the rules completely just for the final 2 minutes of the game. I was wondered about that with the NBA too. They're going to protect the quarterbacks, and defensive players have to know that. And the league probably will tell the Packers this week that they made the wrong call there. Devon House, they went with House early. And then after he got beat on the touchdown, they started going with the rookies. I'm sure they went with House because the rookies have been working mostly at slot guys, and House is more of an outside guy, and King is an outside guy. So when King went out, House came in. But I bet next week we see it's Jackson, Alexander, and Williams as the top 3 guys.
I was all ready to say, boy, what a luxury it is to have Devon House, a guy like Devon House, a veteran, come off the sideline if one of your starters gets hurt. Reminded me of 2014 because Devon House initially played pretty well. There weren't any breakdowns. It reminded me of 14 when he had the same role as the first perimeter guy off the sideline, and they had that depth and that experience off the sideline that they haven't had this past couple of years. And boy, did he get beat.
What's interesting now? Just going back to the Matthews thing.
It's going to be hard to get away from.
I was going by what a comment someone made, which is a good point. I wonder how long, and maybe the way that they'll eventually resolve this, it won't be this year obviously, is that those plays will be reviewable. And then a play like that could be overturned and the call wouldn't be made. I wouldn't be surprised if that's not the case.
Block charge is reviewable in the NBA, right?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know.
Because to me, the only other call in sports that compares is block charge. That's just such a bang-bang subjective call. Mike Daniels talked about how some crews call it one way, some crews call it the other way. It's not a consistent call in this league. It's not, especially those bang-bang ones. Sometimes it's obvious.
It's like holding, too.
Sometimes it's helmet-to-helmet or a late hit like Clay Matthews against the Bears, or a hand smacks the quarterback in the face. Sometimes it's obvious, but many times it's like we saw today. And for it to such a subjective call to not be reviewable, I can see that.
Somebody's asked about Kevin King. There was no update on his injury, just that he had a was it groin?
Yeah, it was groin.
Strained groin, and they won't say much about it. I would think if he was unable to come back into this game, I would guess he wouldn't play next week. The only guy who that ever seemed to happen with was Demarius Randall would leave a game and not come back, and then he'd play the next week.
It was weird.
That's literally like the only guy.
It was weird that Kevin King. 2 things were weird. 1, Kevin King stood with his helmet on the sideline like he wanted to go back in the entire game. 2, I didn't see when the injury happened, but I did see early in the game he went over to the stationary bike, and I'm thinking it's like 85 degrees. Why in the world is he riding a stationary bike? Well, that makes sense. It was the groin. Lane Taylor touchdown penalty. Oh, John, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Look, I didn't get a good look at it at first. I had someone on Twitter send me the play. And if you look at the play, it's not a good angle from the front side. It'd be much better from the back side. But it's pretty clear that Lane Taylor took his left hand outside the frame of Sheldon Richardson and hooked Sheldon Richardson's right shoulder.
And that's an automatic call, then.
It was a penalty. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but it was a penalty. And it's tough to have a play like that take off 7 points because it probably didn't need to hold on that play. I don't think that Sheldon Richardson exactly had him beat by that much. But he hooked him on the right shoulder. You can see the left hand. It's on the right shoulder, outside the frame. And, I mean, one person said, you can probably call that play on most plays. I mean, yeah, you can probably call holding on just about every play. And it was unfortunate for them that it brought 7 points back. But if you look at the replay, it was a clear hold.
So we both picked the Packers to lose. I think everybody on our staff did. Why do you think that they were winning this game and should have won this game and ended up tying?
Before they got gassed, the defense was way better than I anticipated. And if they can look at the first 3 quarters and build on that and forget about being gassed at the end and not being able to, and even still they were able to keep the Vikings out of the end zone at the end. If they can build off the first 3 quarters, I think you have the makings of potentially a really solid defense, especially on the back end. They haven't been able to cover like that the past couple of years. They could really cover. Now, late in the game, there were breakdowns. Guys were getting tired. There were more holes in the pass game for the Vikings than you saw early. There's no question about that. But I thought that they covered better through the first 3 quarters, and then also going back to last week than we've seen the past couple years. And there's clearly more depth. With Kevin King on the field, those top 4 of Tramon Williams, Kevin King, and the 2 rookies, they're good on the back end. And they had this Vikings pass offense and Kirk Cousins flummoxed for a while there.
Interesting point somebody made. Aaron Jones is back next week. That will give
That's
the
huge.
offense a good boost.
Not only that, but Washington lost at home to the Colts today.
The threat of the run, they'll have to honor him more than they have to honor Jamal Williams. So that should help Aaron Rodgers. Should help protect him some. Let's just take 1 or 2 more and then wrap this up.
Okay. Jackson was picked on heavily at the end. Yeah, I mean, a lot of them were.
They hit that pass to Thielen over him, and that was in
right.
zone coverage. Cousins he's a good thrower. He's not as mobile as Keenum was, but especially on deeper balls, he puts those on the money. Mad Dog Matthews.
Aaron Jones in pass protection is iffy, but he's by far the most talented runner, so I don't think that's going to.
So it changes the way they have to defend him when he's on the field. So you gain something, you lose something.
Pass rush again non-existent. Yeah, you're right. The first sack that was split between was it Reggie Gilbert and a DB. It was a coverage sack. I mean, most of their sacks have been coverage sacks. They can really cover, which better than I had anticipated. I think we're in agreement that their pass rush is as bad as we thought.
Mark, you're welcome. Everybody can vent here. This is a place to come and vent. So vent,
yeah, absolutely.
Vent away.
That and my Twitter mentions.
Yeah. Well, I think we've exhausted. I think anybody who is convincible has been convinced, and everybody else thinks we're full of it. So
yeah, major points is that was it the wrong call? Yeah. Did it erase a win? Yeah. Was it the reason the Packers got a tie and didn't win? The sole reason? No, because there were so many plays on their end, and then they got really lucky that the Vikings left a lot of plays on the field too. So if you're upset about the one call, I don't blame you, but I would encourage you to look at the rest of the game outside of one play, because there was a rest of the game, and there were a lot of plays on both sides that were really left on the field. Anything else to add, Pete?
No, just thanks everybody for coming by and letting us know how you feel, good and bad. It's always good to hear from you. So thanks for coming by.
Take care, everyone.